G'day gamers, thanks for your patience. I know it's been a few weeks since our last performance test video. As Switch 2 titles come out, I've been flat out covering a lot of them, and it keeps me very busy. But I'm back with another look at how your favourite Switch 1 games are running on the Switch 2. Let's dive right in. Beyond Good and Evil. This classic action-adventure has been praised for its Switch 1 port, which ran at a locked 30 frames per second and stayed smooth throughout the gameplay, with only minor frame delays during cutscenes. People were curious to see whether the Switch 2 would push it even further in terms of fluidity and responsiveness. On the Switch 2 it remains locked at 30 FPS and it's still smooth from start to finish, although there's no noticeable input delay and cutscenes now play without any of the stutter seen on Switch 1. While the cap keeps things at 30 FPS, which is a little bit disappointing, the consistent performance and stability make this still one of the best ways to enjoy this timeless gem. Now all we have to do is ask Ubisoft where the sequel is. Gas Station Simulator. On Switch 1, the variable resolution helped this game stick to 30 FPS for most of the time, although there were dips down to around the 24 to 26 FPS in busy moments. People wanted to see if the Switch 2 could hold that target frame rate without the compromise and perhaps improve the clarity. And thankfully, on the Switch 2, it's now locked at 30 FPS with no dips, plus noticeably sharper visuals, especially in handheld mode. Everything just feels a bit cleaner and more stable. I always told people that I feel like this was a good game but just a bad port, and now on the Switch 2 it just feels a little bit better. It's a surprisingly nice upgrade for a chill simulator, sharper, smoother and just more consistent than before. Mars Horizon. This is one of my personal favourite games. It's a deep space agency management sim and it ran really well on the Switch 1 because it hovered around the 45 frames per second, but sometimes that would waver during cinematic sequences like rocket launches. So people were curious to see if the Switch 2 could deliver that perfect frame rate. And I'm pleased to report on the Switch 2 it's firmly locked at 60 FPS 99% of the time, including those dramatic launch moments. Menus and animations all feel snappier too, and this is just a fantastic game. If you haven't played it yet, I recommend checking it out. If it's on sale, it's a no-brainer. It's a stellar improvement that makes managing your journey to the stars smoother and more satisfying. New Star GP. Following a recent update, the devs uncapped the frame rate on the Switch 1 to prepare for the Switch 2. It didn't get a specific Switch 2 patch, they just prepared it for extra optimization on the new hardware. On the Switch 1 now it hovers around 45 FPS, but people were keen to see if the new console could max it out. And yep, on the Switch 2 it's a solid 60 FPS from start to finish. Racing feels faster and more fluid and it feels even more responsive. I feel like this is how the game is meant to be played because it's fast, tight and buttery smooth. It goes on sale a lot and I actually recommend this one. It's a throwback to the old Sega Saturn games and I really enjoyed it. The Colonists. This colony building sim ran smooth enough on the Switch 1 despite frame rates swinging between 30 and 55 FPS. Big maps and structures could tax the system and there was hope that the Switch 2 would bring stability. On the Switch 2 it's locked at 60 FPS even with sprawling fully developed maps. There's no dips, no hitches, just smooth management gameplay. The Colonists I felt did the Settlers better than the most recent Settlers. It went back to that old kind of Settlers 4 Gold kind of gameplay and I really enjoyed it. On the Switch 2 it's just an excellent upgrade that lets you build without compromise. Project Diva. I didn't even know this game exists, but it was highly requested. It's a rhythm-based gameplay and it demands precision. Now, on the Switch, the demo held 60 FPS most of the time, dipping to around 45 FPS in rare moments on the second song, which was notorious for stutter. People were asking me to check it out on Switch 2 to see if that was going to be improved. Surprisingly, on the Switch 2, it's actually less stable than the Switch 1. The frame rate dips are more noticeable, and I even had to triple check my tests to make sure the numbers weren't mixed up. But the results are true. I don't know why, I can't explain it, it just doesn't run as good on the Switch 2. It's a puzzling downgrade in stability, and I don't know if they're going to patch it. I'm not going to purchase this one to find out, sorry. Dungeons 4. This comedic dungeon management game, which is a spiritual successor to Dungeon Keeper, it's one of my favourite games. I think I've sunk about 60 or 70 hours in it. It doesn't run the best though. On the Switch, with the frame rate counter, I could see that the performance barely made 20 FPS, and I was really surprised because I've put so many hours in on this. It still always feels playable thanks to its slower pace, I guess, but on Switch 2 it's capped at 30 FPS and it's smooth throughout, and it makes for a much more responsive and pleasant experience, and it's definitely hard to go back to the Switch 1 version now. It's a huge quality of life boost that makes managing dungeons much more enjoyable. This game's still supported with DLC. I'm hoping that we get a Switch 2 patch, but I won't hold my breath. Monster Hunter Stories. The Switch 1 version of the game ran between 45 and 60 FPS, with some minor slowdowns in open areas, and with the third installment on the way for the Switch 2, people were curious to see how the older entry ran on new hardware. On the Switch 2 now, it holds 60 FPS almost all of the time, eliminating all the slowdowns we've seen in open areas and in battle. It's a smooth, responsive upgrade that's perfect for replaying before the sequel arrives. Terra Nil. I'm not sure what's happened, but this week I've had about 4 or 5 requests on Terra Nil on the original review I did to see what it runs like now, which actually inspired me to make this video. This eco-strategy game suffered from heavy stutter on the Switch 1 at launch, and post-release patches did improve that performance significantly, but the dips were still there, especially in the flooded biomes. People were asking if the Switch 2 resolved a lot of these issues. I'm pleased to report on the Switch 2 it's capped at 30 FPS and runs flawlessly within that limit. Performance is consistent, even in large complex areas, but the footage you're seeing here is actually the area that stuttered the most, believe it or not. It's a stable, smooth and still unique as ever game. It's a must try for strategy fans, and if you like this one, check out another game called Preserve. And that's our 9 for today. Feel free to leave suggestions in the comments. I do have to be budget conscious, especially with all the Switch 2 games coming out. I get about 50% of them provided by publishers, and the rest I pay for myself. So it does take away from buying a lot of these games now for backwards compatibility. But I've decided what we'll do is we'll revisit some of the games we've covered in earlier videos before we did the side-by-side and before we did the FPS counters, because I know a lot of people would be curious to see how they run. So there's still plenty more to look forward to. And guys, again, I can't thank you all for your support. I do hope you're enjoying the other content I've been posting between these performance test videos. I've had a few wins with a few reviews, like getting on accolades trailers, especially one with Donkey Kong from Nintendo. And having you guys here watching my videos and along for the ride, I'm very humbled and very chuffed. So thank you a lot for your support, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching my video. If you liked it, the best way you can support What's It Like is by liking, subscribing, and sharing it with your friends. For more reviews, click on the thumbnails to the right, and for everything Nintendo, check out whatsitLike.com.au.